Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back. It's Irae. Irae? I'm not sure how to pronounce it, but it's fine. We're just gonna go where we left off last time. And I'm kinda tired, so sorry for lack of enthusiasm tonight. Suddenly I hear the sounds I heard the sound of waves crashing against the shore. I found myself standing on a mysterious beach, bathed in the crimson hue of dusk. It was a place far removed from the hectic fervor of the city. I could hear nothing but the quiet murmur of the waves and the sporadic chirping of birds somewhere in the distance. The scenery around me possessed a fleeting beauty, one brought about by the setting sun that melted into the contours of the distant sea. This was the sort of sight that would normally vanish in an instant, but somehow I knew that here it would persist eternally. This was a moment frozen in time. Half of the sun had already sunk beyond the horizon, but the remaining half would never budge. The waves continuing to roll in and out were surely governed by something other than the tidal force I was familiar with. Suddenly I understood. This was a dream. There wasn't a beach like this anywhere near Suhara City. Hell, it didn't even look anywhere somewhere in Japan. I'd set foot on foreign soil, set foot on a temporal plane far removed from the present. It would seem that I understood the nature of this place on an instinctual level. By all means, I should have felt some unease, sense of bewilderment, being confronted with such a surreal scene. I simply found myself captivated by it. There's a certain nostalgic atmosphere about the place that spoke to me. No, maybe what really drew me in was the sense of stagnation. This was a world frozen in time, possessed of a beauty of an everlasting sunset. The very concept of the flow of time was meaningless here. An eternal twilight, decorated by a sun that would never dip below the horizon. This world existed on a border between day and night. Bare existence a precarious reverie fallen between the cracks of reality. I felt truly at peace here, within this concentrated moment. I sat down on the beach, absently staring out at the sea and listening to the waves. I found myself overcome with a peculiar sense of deja vu. Even though I had never laid eyes on this place before, it was like I was already deeply familiar with it. Obviously, this was all a dream, but the pleasant feeling nonetheless. Knowing what you're dealing with in advance means that you can handle anything that it might throw your way. Foreknowledge makes it possible to avoid dangerous situations and prolong pleasant ones. Make better, more meaningful decisions. What could bring about a greater sense of peace? Yes, my ideal world was
doing everything in advance, going around in circles till the day you die. Was that your heart's desire?
thoughts. She cut across my line of vision at nearly the same exact time as I turned around. Nice elbow. For the first time, I knew what it meant to have your breath taken away. The word that immediately came to mind was enchanting. Felt certain that anyone who came across this girl on this beach would be stunned in the same way I was. She was outfitted in a shabby, worn-out dress. No one could call her attire elegant, but on her it exuded the radiance that women of high society could never hope to attain from with even their most extravagant formal wear. Her long hair emanated an auburn aura, lit up by the dull red glow of the setting sun as she danced across the wet sand of the beach. Stark white angles peeking out from the hem of her dress offered a sharp contrast to the warm colors of the world around her. She turned to face me. emerald eyes gleaming with gentle light. I couldn't take my eyes off her. It was like a gemstone cut into human form. As I stared, she began to sing, ghost of a smile playing across her face. I could only give myself unto her song, unto the sweet refrain brought forth by her heavenly voice. The words "l'enfant de la punition" suddenly flashed through my head. I didn't know what those words meant or why they came to me now. Her song was a melody unfamiliar to me. However, I felt certain that it was some form of prayer, perhaps a hymn unbeknownst to all but her. The girl before me was utterly pure, removed from our base world, but a melody spilling forth on the lips of being so immaculate be anything but a prayer. Was it possible to listen to a song you had never heard before within a dream? I didn't know. But there was no sense in pondering such questions. It was beautiful, plain, and simple. That was enough to make everything else seem... Question mark? Thing felt vaguely out of place. Was I overlooking something important? Stirring of emotion I had felt up to this point dissolved. Listening with a clear head, the lyrics of her song began to form intelligible sentences. I'd have been a fool. Throughout Japan's history, twilight, borderline between day and night, had been regarded as a time when the boundaries between the natural and supernatural grew thin. Twilight was when the inhuman walked among the living. All along, this girl had been mad.
血が欲しい。ギロチンに注ごう飲み物をギロチンの渇きを癒すため欲しいのは血
Continued singing, the same smile as ever adorning her features. Her emerald eyes were as clear as the surface of the pristine lake, without a trace of malevolence to be found, which was really why the scene before me was so horrifying. She possessed a childlike innocence, in jarring contrast to the utter profanity of her accursed song.
血が欲しい。
Her song reverberated inside my head, spilling itself into seemingly endless echoes. As I stared at her, I caught a glimpse of the crimson band around her neck, through her disheveled hair, unmistakably the work of a guillotine's blade.
欲しいのは血
It was the same girl I'd met in the museum. The cursed girl who I'd met end by the guillotine. L'enfant de la punition, the damned girl.
血が欲しい。
I was assaulted by a sudden brutal impact, as if I'd been hit by a semi. My vision went black. In the next moment, I found myself in the midst of a turbulent crowd gathered around the gallows set up by the center of the plaza. A torrent of sheer delirium, fueled by fear and hatred, and a dark elation consumed everything. The scenery around me little more than churning chaos. Deafening chorus filled my ears. Tu veux le sang et sang? Dans le sang de guillotine? Pour virer la chasse de la guillotine? Je veux le sang et sang? The frenzied crowd was singing the same song that I had heard only moments earlier. Back in the time period when public executions like this were commonplace, it must have been the hymn they offered before the guillotine. The elites, the clergy, and the common man had come together, all for the simple purpose of seeing a criminal decapitated before their eyes. See my head fly from my shoulders. That's right. Don't ask me why. But the criminal strapped to the guillotine was none other than myself. Next to me, some sort of official was calling out to the crowd, speaking a language I didn't recognize, even though I recognized the French language. It would seem he was recruiting a volunteer to act as an executioner. It wasn't long before a man emerged from the crowd. He released the guillotine's blade, and my head tumbled to the ground, bathed in the queer tones of the eternal dusk. My spine was severed in an instant, inducing ataxia. But my ability to feel pain had been lost, along with the connection between my brain and the rest of my body. I could do nothing but stare up at my headless body that spewed forth blood. My heart was still beating. I wanted nothing more than to extend a hand to my body, but that was impossible now.
血が欲しい
All I could do was lie on the ground listening to that abominable refrain. What a normal nightmare. I jolted out of my bed, only to find that it was already light outside. I immediately reached for my neck. It was, of course, still attached to the rest of my body.
夢か。
I slumped down. Dream or not, that experience was no laughing matter. It was just in bad taste. And above all else,
ねえちょっとどうしたのよ
why are you in my room? I wasn't very happy about the fact that Kasumi, who snuck into my room like this on a daily basis, had just seen the whole thing.
うなされてたよ大丈夫やっぱりまだ怪我の具合が
いや。
I wouldn't have been released from the hospital if I hadn't made a full recovery, so this dream had nothing to do with my injuries. It was nice that Kasumi was so worried about me, but I didn't make things clear now that she'd end up driving us both to ruin.
デリケートなんだよ、俺は。枕が変わってうまく寝つけなかっただけ。あと、人の寝顔をジロジロ見てる変態がいたせいだな、うなされてたのは。
それ私のこと
I mean...
他に一体誰がいると
Yeah?
うわ何この恩知らずそんなこと言ってるともうご飯作ってあげないよ
Kasumi gave me an exaggerated glance, shaking the kitchen knife she had brought from her room back and forth. No wonder I had a nightmare. Who wouldn't? There's a crazy person holding a knife staring at them while they sleep. At least that was what I tried to tell myself.
危なっかしいからしまえよ、それ。俺の前でそんなもんちらつかせないでくれ。
それはあんたの部屋に包丁がないから悪いんでしょまったく私がいないとレトルトばっかり食べるくせに少しはその辺感謝して多少の役得をくれたっていいじゃないの
役得
What's she going on about?
レンの寝顔かわいいんだなこれが起きたら小生意気なんだけどね
Began to seriously consider wrapping her in a blanket and throwing her out the window.
抱きしめて唇奪ってやろうかこの女
Huh.
図星
What kind of face is that?
そんなわけあるかよ。とにかく朝飯なら勝手にキッチン使っていいからさっさとしてくれ。
はーいなんかレンって意外に亭主関白臭いよね
Asumi headed off into the kitchen, still waving that damn knife around. I really needed to look into closing up that hole in the wall. That said, her morning antics had done a good job of helping me forget about that horrible dream. I was grateful for that, at least. It was currently 7:20 a.m. Sumi and I sat at the table about to get ready. About to get started on the rice, grilled fish, and miso soup that she had made. Be a Japanese breakfast if I ever seen one. That is the most Japanese stereotypical breakfast. At least for an anime game. It was about 30 minutes from our apartment complex to the school, so right now we could afford to spend 10 minutes eating, 10 minutes cleaning up, and 10 minutes getting ready. Excuse me?
は
Sumi took a sip of tea, washing down the rice that had been stuck in her mouth. Has anyone ever taught this girl the first thing about manners?
制服クリーニングしといたからね。
Oh,
あ
memory served, it had been covered in blood and dust in addition to be ripped all over. Our uniforms were made from white cloth, so it had been hard to miss.
クリーニングでよく片付いたな。新しいの買おうかと思ってたのに。
そう言うだろうと思って注文もしといたけど、なんか少し時間がかかるって言われたから、新品が来るまでちょっとみっともないけど、これで我慢しなさいね。
Sumi placed a folded uniform that had been lying next to her onto my lap. I opened it up to find that it had been patched together here and there.
何その顔。
いや、もしかしてこれ、お前が
Oh god.
悪いかこの文句あるか。
Cares way too much about Ren.
文句は別にないけどさ。
While Kasumi's cooking was more or less edible, her sewing skills left a lot to be desired.
まあ、ありがとう。あとは冬だし、ずっとコートでも着てりゃいいかな。
授業中もそれって校則違反じゃない？
固いこと言うなよ。病み上がりなんだ、俺は。
昨日は病人扱いするなって言ったくせに。
Kasumi shot me a glare, then proceeded to begin chowing down on a single tarako on the plate. What the hell is a tarako? Hold on. Tarako, Japanese. Tarako is a salted raw food, usually made from Alaska pollock. Oh, it's the fish. No, it's not. It's not the fish. It's like, what? Tarako was dyed bright red, but recent concerns about safety of food coloring have been eliminated. Tarako is commonly served with red chili pepper flake. Like, why do I keep saying paper? Pepper flakes. It's like raw fish, basically.
辛い。
Aww. Well, of course it was.
っていうかお前、それ二人で分けるんじゃないのかよ。何一人で丸ごとトライしてるんだ。
やかましいわね。あんたには絶対やらない。これうちのお母さんがくれたんだからね。
Why'd you bring it over then? And so she began nibbling on her tarako without even using the rice to soften its taste. Oh boy. Oh boy.
辛いよ。
Oh boy. It looked like she was about to burst into tears.
お前頭大丈夫か？
大きなお世話です。バカ。
Turned her whole body away from me in her chair. She apparently had no further intention of speaking with me. Not that I really give a shit. It would really been nice if she could stop mumbling stuff like so spicy but so good while acting like that though. It was kind of creeping me out. Since Kasumi had retreated into her own little world, I found myself without anything to do while we ate breakfast. I decided to check out what was on the news. It has been playing in the background this whole time. Fortunately, there wasn't much that caught my interest. Mostly just the usual about the weather and whatnot. And for an average citizen like myself, even the sensational news about corrupt politicians and celebrities caught having affairs wasn't really that exciting or relevant. Since there's nothing interesting on TV, I decided to see if Kasumi had decided to stop acting like a child yet. But right when I was about to shift my focus back to her...
され死亡
Oh.
ん
Whoa, what did they say?
昨夜遅く諏訪原市の公園で男性の他殺死体が発見され、同市警は殺人事件として捜査を。
Wait. There's been a homicide in Suwahara?
現在のところ通り魔的なものであるとの見解がなされており、それというのも被害者の頸部が切断されるという猟奇的な犯行であることから、凶器の断定はまだできていないとのことですが、おそらくは鋭利な刃物、日本刀、もしくはそれに類する刃渡り60センチ以上の刀剣であるという説が有力視されています。
So 60 centimeters is almost equivalent to 2 feet, 24 inches.
なお、被害者の男性は諏訪原市の会社員生野健二さん24歳であり、死因は頸部の切断による。
I stared transfixed at the news report as I elaborated on the details, but the sound of the plate shattering shook me out of my trance. Kasumi must have dropped it. One could hardly blame her for being surprised. Here we were eating breakfast as usual, and all of a sudden the news starts going on about gruesome details of a homicide. Suohara City Park, the city of the murder, was a place most residents were very familiar with as well. Kasumi's reaction was very normal. The details of the incident, however, were far from normal. They said that the cause of death was decapitation. So in other words, his head was cut off? If there were no other wounds on the body, then the act must have been carried out swiftly. Maybe the culprit got the guy as they were walking by each other, or snuck up on behind them. Or they could have knocked out the victim first. I couldn't be sure of the details, but if the murder weapon was a sharp blade like the news case had said, it seemed safe to say that the victim had been beheaded in one clean strike. What is this guy, a detective? You'd need nigh superhuman strength in order to pull something like that off. The culprit would have to be some sort of giant bodybuilder. A guy like that walking around with a katana or something would definitely attract attention. And according to the newscaster, there were no reports of anyone suspicious in the area at around the time of the murder. So what? They set up a piano wire trap in the band or something? My hand shot to my neck. Here I was trying to come up with some realistic scenario to explain the murder. More accurately, I was trying to come up with an explanation that didn't involve that. I was trying to avoid thinking about the implements that one couldn't help but associate with beheading. I had seen it myself at the museum. Hell, I even had a dream involving it the night before. The guillotine that had stood so imposingly amid the execution grounds in my dream. I could still remember it severing my head in vivid detail. I had woken up to find that someone really had been decapitated. Was this just a coincidence? Just something I could laugh off as not concerning me? After all, I had seen the same girl in both real life and my dream. It was already apparent that the boundary between the two was thinner than we could thought. Who could prove that what happened in the dream could also occur in reality? In other words, my dream had been...
レン、もう行こう。遅刻しちゃうよ。
Kasumi was right. It wasn't healthy to keep going down this unrealistic line of thought.
わかった。着替えるから部屋戻っててくれ。
別に照れなくてもいいのに。
This girl's a huge pervert.
うるさいな。それより。
はいはい。玄関近いでしょ。面倒だから嫌ですよ。とりあえず先に食器だけ片付けとくね。
Even our typical morning routine felt somehow strained.
ほら、もたもたしてない。さっさと行く。
Chop chop. But unlike me, Kasumi wasn't the type to keep moping around forever. It was business as usual as she stood in front of the apartment harassing me.
なんで男のあんたが私より準備に時間かかるのよ。
Just got a lot on his mind, lady.
あ、それともあれかな？もしかしてお化粧してたりしたのかな？
There's that fucking face again.
殴るぞ、お前は。
Like a role reversal. Very typical role reversal. Did no one ever tell her that it was rude to make fun of other people's appearances?
そっちこそ少しはシャレっ気くらいつけろよな。いつも汗まみれで竹刀ばっかり振ってるから男じゃなくて女にモテ。
喧嘩売ってるわけ？
先に売ってきたのはお前だろうが。
何よ、昔はそれがいいとか言ってたような気がするのに。
気がするだけかよ。
I sure as hell never said that.
だいたいあんただって女の子にモテ。
なくても別にいい。特にお前には。
That's cold, Ren.
ちょっと何これ、ほんと可愛くないですよ。
Oh.
だから可愛くなくていいんだよ。あと、これってなんだ？これは物か。
Oh yes、この撲石野郎。
Oh, yes! Brain cells are going to start dying if I continued this conversation. I didn't feel like being late for school the day after I got back from being in the hospital, so I urged Kasumi along.
ほら、行くぞ。
行くぞー！
はーい。って本当にコート着てきたんだね。まだそんなに寒くないのに。
今日は冷えるって言ってただろ。
そうだっけ？
They did, but I thought better of bringing up the news again.
俺、寒がりだしな。
I'd rather not see the patchwork mess I was wearing. I kept that last bit to myself. Smart. We walked for a bit until we hit a crossroads. The junction was in the heart of the city, so you could say that all the roads converged here and then split off again. The city was split neatly into blocks by the main streets crossing here, and with the church and the hospital on the side facing the mountains, and the park and amusement park on the side facing the sea. As long as you started from here, it was impossible to get you lost. I figured one might expect this sort of thing from a city known as a tourist destination like Suwahara. No one would bother visiting if it was impossible to make your way around. Of course, last night there had been a murder at the park on the seafront side of Suwahara favored by tourists. Not exactly the sort of thing that's good for business. Police were probably already on the move looking for the killer. It would be best not to walk around at night for the next few weeks, in more ways than one.
レン、
Sumi suddenly called out to me.
そっち方向違うよ。
あ？
そっちはその。
Right. Of course.
悪い。
The fastest way to reach the school was to cut through the park, so I instinctively started walking in that direction. Thank God Kasumi had caught me. I had no intention of approaching a murder scene of my own volition.
久しぶりなんで道忘れたかも。よければ手とかは引いてくれると助かる。
Oh.
あのね、バカな冗談言ってると本当に置いてくからね。もう。
Oh, no luck. I tried playing it off to lighten the mood, but all I managed to do was piss her off. In the end, though, Kasumi made sure I was following her the whole way to school. Like Mother Hen, I decided I should express my gratitude by offering her some important advice.
お前、先に教室入れ。
は？
だから俺のことはもういいよ。気にしないで、ほら、教室。
あんた何言ってんの？
わかんないかな。お前鈍いよ。
Why? Maybe I couldn't really complain about Katsumi being so open, but at times I wished she was a little more perceptive. It didn't even occur to her on the way here. Sometimes I just wasn't sure about this girl.
今俺と一緒に教室入ると、お前変な目で見られるぞ。
Oh, association.
なんで？
なんでも何も。
I was already enough of an outcast to begin with, and now here I was coming back to school after spending 2 months in the hospital because I had gotten in a huge fight with a classmate. It was hard to predict what sort of response I would get.
そんなのと仲良くして変な噂立てられたくなかったら、ここは当たらず触らず。
He doesn't want to drag Brenda or Sumi down. But she doesn't care. Maybe I shouldn't have said that. Sumi was the sort of person with a strong sense of justice, a rarity in this day and age.
ムカつくな。私そういう考え大嫌い。ほらレン、一緒に行くよ。
Okay, well, she grabbed my arm and started dragging me with her.
頼む
Oh boy. She might have managed to make a nice entrance, empathetically swinging the door open and all, but things didn't go so well after that.
何かなこれ。
お前のテンションに引いてるってのが多分3割。
Uh-huh. The other 70% went without saying. Unfortunately for Kasumi, the world didn't care if one was in the right or not. My first day at school in 2 months was off with a stellar start. As I had expected, I didn't exactly blend into the classroom. I caught my classmates casting sideward glances at me more than a few times. Kasumi didn't know when to quit, so she kept trying to get me involved with things, but I would rather she'd just let me alone. It wasn't like I was getting off on the idea of being some aloof loner or whatever, but I wanted to take things easy for the time being. A form of rehab, in a sense. It was only natural for people to be wary around someone who had been involved in a violent incident, so I couldn't get angry at my peers. In fact, if they had started acting all friendly instead, it would feel like they were afraid of me in some way. That wouldn't really set well with me. I never had any friends except for Kasumi and Shiro and Himuro in the first place. Nothing wrong with things staying the way they are. Kasumi didn't need to keep up these futile efforts.
早く飯でも食ってこいよ。
だからレンも一緒に行くの
Oh god. I had the honor of being invited to lunch by my childhood friend, who just so happened to be a bit of a celebrity around school.
何が悲しくて一回も口聞いたことない女5人の集団に俺が混ざらなきゃならないんだよ。
それは誤解を解くために
They won't believe us.
やめとけよ、バカらしい。
A group of girls, hell if I can remember any of their names, stood behind Kasumi, gazing at me suspiciously.
あれ、友達だろ。だったら嫌がらせみたいなことしてやるなって。
なんでよレンも私の友達じゃない
そう言ってくれるのはありがたいんだけどな。
The Ren is a loner. Was she trying to argue that a friend of a friend was a friend too, or something? Come on.
とにかくこういうのは最初が肝心なのあんたもこれを機にマイナスイメージを払拭して
Start making your daily life into something meaningful. Blah, blah, blah. She just started going on with the stuff like she was straight out of some sort of after-school special. No, thank you.
ちょっとレン聞いてるの
Okay, I was seriously getting fed up here. Run away! Oh.
おいこらそこの君
Oh, fuck! Kasumi grabbed my shoulders the moment I began rising from my seat.
もしかして逃げようとか思ってない
Oh!
どうだろうな。
Oh, yes, I was.
とりあえずその手を離せ。
嫌よだって話したら逃げるでしょ
No.
信用ないな。
あるわけないじゃん目が嘘ついてるもん
That's a brilliant sentence.
お前もうちょっと人を見る目を。
大丈夫レンを見る目は確かですほらだからゆっくり席に着きましょうね
Pushed down on my shoulders, a radiant smile plastered across her face. Having spent much of the prime of her youth waving a sword around, Kasumi was stronger than your average guy. I couldn't help but feel sorry for her. As a girl, her life was heading up a shit creek without a paddle.
何その目はすごく失礼なこと考えてない
お前被害妄想が激しいな。
I suddenly loosened my muscles. And she had been putting her entire body weight against my shoulders, Kasumi tumbled onto the floor. I'd made sure she didn't hurt herself too badly, but she was in no position to block my escape now.
こらちょっと待ちなさい。
悪いけどまた今度な。
Slipped past her and offered some parting remarks as I entered the hallway. I cast a glance to the side only to find Kasumi's friends still staring at me. Didn't need to conspicuously avert their gaze as soon as I noticed them. As soon as they noticed I was looking at them, jeez. See, just like I said, people's preconceived notions don't go away that easily. Honestly, people weren't exactly mistaken in their perception of me. They're trying to clear things up or whatever was a ridiculous idea to begin with. There was no need to expend a bunch of effort only to end up making things awkward for everyone involved. Like I was trying to tell her earlier, I did try to be considerate in my own way. Right as I was reflecting on that, my phone started beeping. Not a common occurrence. At first I wondered who the hell would be texting me, but it wasn't like there were many people who had my number in the first place. I glanced at the display inside. Seems I had found an excellent excuse to get the hell out of Dodge. Zero? Congratulations on getting out of this hospital. School was lonely without you. How are you feeling? There's some things I'd like to talk to you about, so I'll be waiting on the roof. By the way, no one else is around. Just the two of us. Happy, excited face. It's Hiruma, is it? Just the two of us! La la la! Just me and Fuji. Mwah! Bringing up Imuro. Yep. He only has 3 friends. What was I supposed to say to this? Looked like she hadn't changed a bit. I wasn't sure whether I should heave a long sigh or start laughing. As a senior, surely she had something better to do than messing with her underclassmen. I really couldn't figure out that part of her out. Like, true, I couldn't picture her getting stressed out over college entrance exams or job hunting. Maybe that sort of carefree approach did suit her. But let's just say she took things too far. Anyway, the roof, huh? It'd be a little rude just to turn down their offer, and besides, I was looking for a way to give Kasumi the slip anyway. I climbed up the stairs and threw open the door to the roof.